Hi everyone, my name's Sam. My pronouns are they, them. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Wurundjeri country of the Kulin Nation. Pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm non-binary trans, I'm autistic, and I am a young adult. I've worked closely with autistic and LGBTIQA plus people for the last couple of years, and more broadly, I've worked in the disability sector for the past 5 or 6 years. Co-authored a book that came out this year called The Awesome Autistic Guide for Trans Teens. I wrote that with the wonderful Yen Perkis, and I'm really privileged and glad to be here. And I suppose the main point that I'm going to be making across this talk is that I'd like there to be more opportunities for the autistic and LGBTIQA plus communities to connect, collaborate, and support each other. So I'd like to highlight that there is a large overlap between the autistic and LGBTIQA plus communities. I think that the communities, especially autistic communities that I've hung out online, large groups have noticed that there's this intersection for a really long time, but it hasn't really been officially acknowledged until very recently. We have research that shows autistic people are 7 times more likely to identify as trans or gender non-conforming than non-autistic people, and also that 70% of the autistic community identify as non-heterosexual. So that includes labels such as homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, etc. I've noticed this also through my work with different journeys. So my role is LGBTIQA plus autistic peer support, and a lot of the people that I'm speaking to, sometimes they won't want to come out until I talk about my own queer identity, but a lot of people find that autistic spaces historically aren't super LGBTIQA plus inclusive, and that there is a bit of a gap in being able to connect up members of people who belong to both of these communities. I think that it's particularly important that there are resources and opportunities focused on supporting autistic LGBTIQA plus youth. We know that mental health issues are going to be compounded if people are belonging to multiple minority statuses, and there is a real level of vulnerability across this cohort. I've experienced it personally, I've experienced it professionally, and there's also a lot of research that supports that there needs to be more mental health supports for the cohort. This is from the Writing Themselves in 4 report that came out last year. It was a survey that looked at the health outcomes for LGBTIQA plus youth across multiple cohorts. They found that autistic and neurodivergent young people had increased levels of psychological distress, which included thoughts of suicide and self-harm. But on a positive note, we found that there was an increased attendance to LGBTIQA plus events. I think that that's just worth noting, that this is a cohort that wants to get out and that wants to be engaging with the LGBTIQA plus community. So why isn't it happening more? Now, this is from my experiences through working with these different organizations and talking with young people and engaging with these communities, is that often autistic affirming spaces and LGBTIQA plus affirming spaces don't have a lot of interaction. There are sensory differences and communication differences and interest differences that means that the autistic and LGBTIQA plus community can feel, I think it can be a little bit tricky to find spaces to fit in. Often LGBTIQA plus events are large and involve large social gatherings, whereas there are a lot of autistic people who would prefer to have smaller events or prefer to have things that are more activity based or prefer to have less pressure on social interaction. This is a slide that I think is what there needs to be more of, and this has come from working with multiple people and thinking about how I can engage the community and how the community can get connected up together. I think that events, groups, and spaces need to be both LGBTIQA plus and autistic affirming. We see it a little bit, but I don't think that we see it enough. I think there needs to be more representation of LGBTIQA plus and autistic people in workplaces, and I think that needs to be overt representation as well. There will be lots and lots of LGBTIQA plus autistic people in workplaces, but I think that there needs to be a platform for people to be expressing these identities and having this out in the fields. This is particularly important for workplaces who are interacting with the autistic and LGBTIQA plus communities, whether that be through schools, whether that be through the disability sector, whether that be through the health sector. I think that there needs to be more education around autism and LGBTIQA plus spaces, and of course more education around LGBTIQA plus identities within autistic spaces. Of course, we need more funding to be connecting these communities together, to be employing more staff, roles such as myself, LGBTIQA plus autistic peer support. We've had really positive feedback, and we now have a team of 3 of us since last year, and we rely on a lot of grants to be able to facilitate this, but there's already been some really positive stories and really positive outcomes of being able to just have people come to an event and be able to see their identities represented in other people around them. There needs to be more opportunities for the autistic and LGBTIQA plus communities to connect, collaborate, and support each other. I think that there's a real missed opportunity at the moment to be engaging with these communities and getting ideas and letting it be grassroots, letting it be community-led, because we have a lot of people who are really, really interested and really, really passionate about building up these communities and developing these communities together. I'd love to see that more funding opportunities and more grants and more spaces that are specifically catering to the intersection between LGBTIQA plus and autistic people. Thanks. And there's some references for you. Thank you so much for your time today.